What's going on, everybody? We are getting a good day out of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is getting so close to that 100K. In this video, I'm going to talk about what analysts expect. What are we going to get before the year ends, or by the time the year ends? And we are getting a bit of a red day for the Bitcoin miners. Before I get flooded with questions about why is Bitcoin going up but the Bitcoin miners are going down, remember, this happens sometimes. Wall Street loves to fool retail. Once everyone piles in on the calls, they love to smack those Bitcoin miners down. My advice is look at the Bitcoin miners over the whole cycle, not just the day-to-day. For instance, Bitcoin is up 51% over the last 6 months, 109% year-to-date, and about 6 or 7x from 15K, give or take. Iron is up 140% in the last 6 months, only 70% year-to-date. And in the bear market low, this was a dollar something stock. It has done 878%, almost a 10x. Over this cycle, I do expect the Bitcoin miners to outperform Bitcoin, especially during the good times. But anyways, my point is realize that there are going to be days where Bitcoin goes up, the Bitcoin miners go down. If anything, I see that as a great buying opportunity. Realize that Bitcoin at its current price means that pretty much the vast majority of Bitcoin miners are in the profits now. We have some that already reported Q3, but we have many that still have to report Q3, which is an iffy quarter. The quarter that's going to be exciting is Q4, October, November, December, the quarter we're in right now. They are about to report. The ones that haven't reported yet are going to report July, August, and September. During that time, Bitcoin pulled back all the way down to 49K. So I'm not expecting the best earnings. I am expecting good forward guidance though. But before I get carried away about earnings, let's look at what the analysts think. 9 analysts share their end of year price predictions. Linux Lai, the global chief commercial officer of OKX, says he believes it's going to go beyond 100,000. Following past Q4s, I would expect the same. Tony Sycamore of IG Markets, low to mid 90s, very reasonable. And he gives a little note about alts. Ethereum, for example, is trading 20% below its year-to-date high. I suspect that switching out of Bitcoin and into alts is a theme that we will see play out into year-end. And we might see that. We might see a kind of a shift into the altcoins. We see the gains come from Bitcoin. People are like, okay, how much more is Bitcoin really going to give me? And they start moving into these alts that can give more multiples potentially. Josh Gilbert of eToro, 100K. We're going to reach 100K. Ki Young Ju, Crypto Quant, 58K. What is that about? Well, he cites the overheated derivatives as the reason for an imminent correction, but he says we're entering price discovery, so the market is heating up even more. If correction and consolidation occur, the bull run may extend. However, a strong year-end rally could set up 2025 for a bear market. I disagree. Maybe Q1, maybe at some points we will see obviously corrections in 2025, and that's for sure. But a bear market for 2025, I doubt it. Pav Hundal from SwiftX, $103,000 target, the highest one so far. Guy Armani, HDI fund, around 100,000. Expecting the bull market to extend into 2025 with Bitcoin potentially surprising us by reaching a high of 250,000. I don't know about that. That might be a little too bullish, but I'm all for it. We'll see how things play out over the cycle. For instance, if Q4 we just keep rallying, maybe there's a possibility of 250K, but I'm not holding my breath. Otherwise, I'd probably suffocate to death. And then we have Maddie Greenspan with 1 or 2 T's, I'm not sure. Quantum Economics says, are you tired of winning yet? Well, I'm not. I'm never tired of winning. I do get tired of losing though. Just higher. He says it's going to go higher. No price target. Okay. Thank you. Ben Simpson, Collective Shift, 100,000. With the Trump election, interest rates coming down, the potential for a quantitative easing starting up in the future, and getting relatively consistent days of $1 billion Bitcoin ETF volume, more people are catching on. Then we have Tom Wan, independent analyst, saying 80 to 95,000. I believe Bitcoin would cross the 95 to 100,000 mark before the end of 2024. However, it's important to note that 100K is a key psychological zone, I agree. And we could see a significant selling wall near that range. 100%, absolutely. I am completely in agreement. I do think 100K will be a psychological resistance. There will be a lot of people that have that as a target to sell. There will be a lot of people that also on a break of it will be a buy point. If it breaks that 100K, people will be buying. It is a matter though of breaking that 100K before the sellers take it down a notch. Too long? Didn't read? I sure didn't read the whole thing. Overall, the consensus among analysts is that Bitcoin will end the year trading at above or around the 100,000 mark. Despite the overarching bullish sentiment, most analysts warned of outsized volatility, major corrections for Bitcoin in the coming months. If we do see an insane Q4, I'm talking going over 100K, Bitcoin getting a little too hot, I do think we'll see some sort of correction in Q1, a little bit of a pullback, retracement, and that will be one of the final buying opportunities this cycle. And let me show you the Bitcoin halving. We know that it always tops out on the year after the halving. If you didn't, now you know. 1 year after the halving, 8,000%. 1 year after the halving, 284%. 1 year after the halving, 559%. So 1 year after the halving could be an ideal sell point. So right around April of 2025. Remember, the halving was back in April of 2024. So just looking at this, that would be a great point to heavily trim at that 1 year after the halving mark. So coming up in 2025 around April, especially if things are going good, especially if things are green, especially if things have been running up, that could be a fantastic point to take some considerable profits, even in the weeks to months leading up to that, as long as things are going good. My opinion of 2025 is if we see a correction in Q1, it would be a buying opportunity, probably the final one. If we see a rally in Q1, it might be a time to trim a little bit in anticipation of a correction later. But make no mistake, I do believe 2025 we will see the peak. It could be a year after the halving. It could be a year in multiple months, kind of like the 2016 halving cycle here. You notice that? But look at here in 2021. Actually, we did go up slightly higher, if you guys remember, like a couple thousand higher. But, I mean, you made your money, you don't need to worry about that little tiny extra. The reality is, if you look 1 year after the halving, that could be a fantastic profit-taking point or exiting point even, if you're on that hype. Look at the year after the halving of 2012, 2013. This was the halving right here before 2013, and literally 1 year after the halving. It does have to do with elections, and there is getting more space between the halvings and elections, so that might kind of throw things off a little bit. I'm still curious how that will affect things, but my expectation is we will top out somewhere around 6 months to a year from now. When things are really good, you want to trim just a little bit off the table. Don't catch FOMO. It's very easy to get swept up in it. When we're seeing these crazy amazing days after amazing days after amazing days, it's easy to want to throw more in, thinking that that's all we're going to get, nothing but great, multiple $100 up in the account days. There are going to be pullbacks. We are going to approach a bear market, a major correction. Things are looking good now. This is the time to still be bullish. Now I want to show you guys Bitcoin, and I want to show you how we were so overbought here, right? We're getting overbought. People are saying, oh, we're too overbought. It's time for a good, retracement, a good cool down, and perhaps a little consolidation is definitely good for Bitcoin. But look at what we saw on the, the hype with the spot ETF approval, right? So we saw a similarly overbought Bitcoin. Let me kind of zoom, look at, okay? A similarly overbought, actually even more so, a more overbought Bitcoin right here, right? Right here, February. That is where the RSI was at its peak. We saw a little correction, like a couple days of basically sideways action, maybe $1,000 down, 2,000 down, right around the 60,000 range. And from being that overbought, we cooled down for a split second. We went even higher by 10,000 points. If Bitcoin does the same, we will see 100,000, 102,000 or so before year end. I think it is more than possible. I'll try to bring it up on the screen, but following Q4, we always see a rally for Bitcoin. And the fact that Q3 was rough this cycle makes me even more certain of that. I do think the hype is drawing in. I think everyone is starting to talk about Bitcoin. And that is something to start being cautious about, start worrying about. But I think the FOMO is just kicking in. We are just getting it now. Think about this. At this time, last cycle, so right before December, right, last cycle, we were in the, sub 20,000 range. Bitcoin from this time last cycle did a 3x. If Bitcoin does a 3x from this point in the cycle till its peak, we're talking about a 200 and something thousand dollar Bitcoin. It is possible. Do I think it is going to happen? Do I think it is 100% certain? Not necessarily. Do I think it's good to take profits following the cycle and not just based on a price target? Absolutely. But anyways, before this becomes way too long of a video and I never get a chance to get it out here, I want to show you guys BTBT. It is starting to pull back. The Bitcoin miners, like I said, are having a red day while Bitcoin is going up. Please don't spam me with questions of why Bitcoin is going up, but the miners aren't. This happens sometimes. If anything, if you have conviction in the Bitcoin miners, this should make you even more bullish because the very asset that they are completely tied behind is rallying while they are not. What does that tell you? That tells you they're getting more and more undervalued versus their asset that they are literally mining, their asset that brings them in their revenue, that brings them in their profits. And make no mistake, with Bitcoin at this price, they are all profitable. Now, BTBT, it does look like we're coming in to fill this gap. We might come down to the low fours. We do have another gap here in the 350 area. These would be fantastic points to buy some BTBT in my opinion. Following the chart, we are in a broadening pattern. We are kind of at the middle point now. We reached around the middle point before cooling down. We took out this previous top. We went a little bit farther, but it cooled down. it retraced a bit. Market participants might be worried about that gap. Market participants might be ready to take some profits. Considering it did about a double from mid-October, that's reasonable. So maybe we get some cooling down. Maybe we get a fill of this gap. Maybe we get a fill of this 350s gap. To me, those would be some great buying opportunities. We're not going to get many more throughout this cycle. And it is getting later and later. Keep that in mind. This is not like buying BTBT back when it was $2 or $1 or 50 something cents even. The multiples are getting diminished, but to me, BitDigital is still easily a 2x, even more. If Bitcoin doubles from here, I would expect BTBT to triple to 4x. If Bitcoin only gains 50% or so from here and tops out at like 150K, give or take, then maybe BTBT only does like a 2x or a little bit more. I do think BTBT, many of the Bitcoin miners will outperform Bitcoin 2 to 1, maybe 1.5 to 1 in some cases, maybe even better in other cases. But to me, Bitcoin miners are a great bet on Bitcoin for this cycle. Even MicroStrategy, Coinbase, the different Bitcoin proxies. Don't go all in on one. It's nice to have a multiple. They run at different times. They don't just totally follow Bitcoin. They can run up on good news, run down on bad news that is just centered on their stock alone. There could be dilution news. There could be a short report. So they do run and drop at different times. That's why I think it's good to have multiple Bitcoin miners that you like. What is your play on Bitcoin? Is it the Bitcoin miners? Is it MicroStrategy, Coinbase, leveraged Bitcoin funds? I think Bitcoin will give plenty gains, but it is fun to be in some of these Bitcoin derivatives, Bitcoin proxies, because of the potential outsized returns versus Bitcoin. Days like this definitely shake people up, definitely worry people. And to me, this is just another day in the grand scheme of things, another day in the overall cycle where these miners will continue to outperform Bitcoin in many cases. But thanks as always for watching, guys. Get ready for the Bitcoin miners earnings. There are more coming up. I believe Bitfarms is today. But my opinion is, you take advantage of days like this because we won't get many of them. I'm not trying to chase these Bitcoin miners in 2025. That is when I plan to be taking profits. That is when I plan to be selling, maybe even earlier than that. Maybe even Q4 if Bitcoin really goes crazy, if the Bitcoin miners really go crazy. It might be time to sell some covered calls. It might be time to trim a little bit in anticipation of building up that cash for the future, for the what ifs. But in the end, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is follow the cycle. Following the cycle is key. And the cycle says we have somewhere around at least 6 months, maybe a year left, and things should continue to get very exciting for our favorite asset. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.